Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Amin Dhillon, and today on this episode, we're going to be addressing some of your big real estate questions. We're going to be addressing it all, everything from what are the predictions and trends we can expect to see this year, to answering the big question, is the real estate market in Canada going to crash, specifically here in Ontario? We've got an answer for you today. We're also going to be talking about which areas are still affordable and the best ones to invest in. So, to answer your questions today on the podcast, I am going to be joined by my special guest, Amit Saini, who is a real estate broker and has been practicing real estate for almost 20 years in the GTA. Here is my exclusive chat with him where we address all your big real estate questions. Amit, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing as good as we can in the current situation, and have adapted, and I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I'm really good, and I'm so glad we reconnected because I have been already reaching out to you because I'm trying to figure out this whole real estate market here, especially in Toronto. But I know Ontario overall has been just a crazy year. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, so 2021, I remember a lot of people going into this year were like, how has it been the worst behind us? Are things going to calm down? Like, are we going to reopen? And so far, it seems like things are just getting crazier and crazier. So, in your professional opinion, I know you are out there helping clients sell and buy homes. I know everyone was screaming before that the market was going to crash here in Ontario. So, can you tell us, first of all, for people that are worried, is the market going to crash?
That's a really good question. Something I get asked very often, actually, is kind of from a prediction standpoint, is the market going to crash? Is it going to continue the way it has been? Is there going to be some relief for buyers who've been struggling to get into the market? There's a couple of factors we have to consider. I mean, we've had record-setting months in January and February, where we've seen 50% increase in sales from the previous year. So that's something that we don't usually see, and a lot of it is due to the pent up demand from the previous year because of COVID. And now there's kind of a renewed optimism moving forward now that there's been vaccinations starting across the world, really, and that's given people kind of renewed hope to jump back into the market. And in addition to the fact that we're at extremely low mortgage rates as well, which has also given buyers an added boost to get into the market. That being said, from a crash standpoint, I don't we haven't seen any indicators really that would necessarily precipitate that kind of thing happening with regards to a mortgage crash, sorry, a real estate crash. There are a lot of strong fundamentals which are kind of supporting some of these price increases. And there's other fundamentals which usually support the real estate market, which we haven't even considered, thus far, such as immigration. That's a large one, which immigration has kind of been on pause since COVID started. And usually immigration is a big source of, a big boost for the real estate market in general, not only in terms of buying and selling, but also in terms of rentals. So for a lot of these investors out there who have, the rental properties are not occupied or not being occupied as quickly, their rents have dropped. A lot of that void was previously filled by immigration and students as well coming into the city. So those two things have really affected the rental market, and in turn also affected the housing market. So once that's opened up, potentially this year and into next year, we're going to see the added benefit of that. And so if there's any other things, that could potentially slow down the market, such as a mortgage interest rate hike, that could be counteracted with these kinds of things such as immigration. So I don't foresee a crash coming. For that's the long-winded answer for it. The other thing is we were looking at a very low level of inventory across many major centers and cities in Ontario, which has fueled this price increase in the last couple of months. So once we're starting to see more inventory now, so that's a really good sign, and it's going to give some relief to the buyers out there who've been competing in multiple offers, and maybe having to put 5 or 10 offers down before actually being able to secure a place, and bidding way over asking, and many times having to go in without conditions. So the inventory is coming. That's a very good sign, and I think it's going to give a little bit of relief to buyers out there.
Now you're saying both January and February the sales have increased 50% since last year. But one of the things I've been noticing is now I think the minimum price in the GTA for a detached at least, but let alone now pretty much a townhouse, is $1 million. So I think a lot of people are wondering how much more will they or should they expect the prices to increase. So is there any way that you have some insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. The average price of a home in the GTA is about $1 million. If we look at all home types, across the board. Now, if you look at just detached homes, it's even higher than that. But if we take everything into account, it's about $1 million. And the predictions for this year, for at least for the city of Toronto and the GTA, depending on where you are, it can vary. But we're looking at double-digit increases. That's what's predicted. So
Wow.
in excess of 10% appreciation from 2020 to 2021. Some areas you're already starting to see those kinds of numbers, and we're just into March. If we had some predictions that came out last year, back in October and November, a lot of the large real estate organizations came out with predictions for 2021, and at that time, they had kind of predicted a 4 to 6% increase for this year. So that was, I guess, in hindsight, could be potentially a conservative number. But we don't know how the rest of the year is going to progress. But so far, it's looking like we're going to see at least double-digit increases in the GTA this year.
So for sellers, that's fantastic because obviously, especially if they just recently bought their property, they've already the value has appreciated so much in such a short amount of time. But for the buyers, so I feel like there's this whole mentality out there that there's such a frenzy because people feel like if they don't try to get something now, they're going to be outpriced from the market that they
Mm.
want to be in and that they're just not going to be able to get anything, period. Right. So, what are you getting in terms of when you're working with clients? Do you think eventually people won't be able to afford anything in the GTA?
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, that's something that we definitely encounter on a regular basis. People who just generally come to us and they can't afford necessarily buying in their primary area of choice. Sometimes they've done the research and they know exactly what areas they can or cannot afford. But yeah, I mean that's definitely a concern for buyers, and that's why we're seeing a shift. I'm not going to call it an exodus, but we've definitely seen a shift of buyers moving outside of Toronto. Number one, because of affordability. So you're seeing a lot of buyers moving more into the suburbs, that are outside of the GTA, whether it's going west to Waterloo, Cambridge, London, Kitchener, or going north to Barrie. Um, you know, uh, Even cottage country has seen a huge increase in sales and average price point, and even to the east, to Durham region and beyond, whether it's Whitby, Oshawa, Peterborough, Clarington. A lot of these cities are seeing huge increases because of the spillover effect of people moving outside of the core. So affordability is one of the big reasons. The second reason was, of course, the effects of COVID and lifestyle. So when COVID was happening last year, many people said, you know what, I'm going to be transitioning to working from home. This is an opportunity maybe for us to change our lifestyle. And instead of living in a smaller space or in a condo in downtown Toronto, maybe this is an opportunity to look at homes outside of the GTA, get a little bit more space, and kind of change their way of living. And that's we've had many clients come to us with those kinds of requests. And we don't our myself and our team, we service the GTA, but areas outside of the GTA we also assist our clients with, who are looking to move into different neighborhoods, and we refer them to our trusted partners and agents who work in those areas. And so that's definitely been a trend that we've seen last year and continuing into this year. I think there's going to be another big push for that for the summer as well. People who are maybe in family, like younger families, they're considering that move out, whereas some young professionals who are just kind of starting their career, and they know they're going to be needing to work downtown or needing to come back to downtown Toronto, they had a really good window of opportunity. Last year, as we know, condo prices in the core dropped significantly. and rents dropped significantly as well. So that affected not only end users, who are looking to sell their homes, their condos. It also affected investors who, saw significantly lower yields on their investment properties because, their rents have dropped by $400 or $500 on whether it's a 1 or 2 bedroom unit. So that's a significant amount of money, and their costs haven't dropped, haven't really dropped to kind of coincide with that. So their costs are increases, their maintenance fees are increasing, yet the rents were dropping. And so some investors, decided to offload their properties and sell their condos. Some end users decided to sell and get out of the city. So that's why condo prices downtown dropped last year. But that trend has kind of subsided, and we're seeing a shift, especially beginning this year, and especially into February, now March. The number of condos that are being sold are record setting compared to, when we trying to sell a condo in the middle of last year or at the end of last year, you saw the days on market go up. Now we're seeing those days on market go down again. We're seeing multiple offers again. There's way more interest in the condo market in the last month or two, and many people kind of, may have. There's still, I would say, an opportunity to get back into the market at prices that are very, very good, relatively speaking, to where they were at the peak of the condo market. And we're going to get back there because we're seeing a lot of pre-construction condos selling for, premium prices, and those projects are selling very quickly. So I think there's renewed kind of hope for the downtown market. Investors are looking for deals to get back in. End users are saying, hey, this is my opportunity to finally get that downtown condo that I couldn't get before. And I think we're going to see that market bounce back very strongly this year.
Okay. And in terms of price, you were saying that we're starting to see it where it was at the peak. I would say maybe pre 2020. Maybe we'll say
Mhm.
that was the peak, or early 2020. So do you think we have now exceeded that, or are we just about to hit that level?
So the condo market is about to get there. So it's not quite there yet. It's very dependent on the area, and condo market's very different in terms of, certain areas and certain buildings. Some will appreciate faster than others, and so that's something you have to kind of take into consideration. But on a whole, it's definitely where we're approaching getting, near those peak levels, and we may eclipse those by the end of the year.
Okay, so if somebody is like, I really want to get into the condo market, maybe they're an investor, this is the period to do that
Yeah.
because prices
Oh,
are
for
still
sure.
below what they were going for,
Yeah.
but that window is slowly getting smaller and smaller, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I'll give you an example. We had a listing that we sold 2 weeks ago. It was a very affordable kind of, condo downtown, right in the core downtown in the Bay and Wellesley area, and it was priced for under $500,000. And within 2 days, we had 16 offers on that condo, and it's the demand has just been much, much more than it was last year. And out of those 16 offers, about 10 of them had not even seen the property, so they were willing to offer on it sight unseen, in terms of not booking a physical viewing and just buying it strictly off of the virtual tours and the 3D walkthroughs and the pictures, and the information and the floor plans and everything. So there's certainly an appetite for condos again now. And like you said, if someone's thinking about getting into the condo market sooner rather than later, would be a good idea. As we're expected that those prices are expected to come back strong this year.
great. Okay, so that leads me to my next question. So, one of the things I know I would always look at is pre-construction versus resale, right? So, before, pre-construction used to be a better deal because it used to be cheaper than what was on the market. Plus, you were able to gather that time. So, not only would it appreciate by the time you took it over, but you had that time to gather your 20% deposit. Now, like you were just mentioning, builders are still charging premium prices for these condo projects. I've been looking. I was actually curious to see what they were going for. They're starting now in the sixes. Some of these places for a one bed, one bathroom. And so I was like, that's interesting when there are resale properties here that are going for much less, that would be probably bigger or at least equivalent. So for people that are like, oh, I always thought pre construction was the more affordable option, it sounds like it may depend on what they're trying to get and what area. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. With pre-construction condos, There's a whole bunch of factors that you have to kind of consider. But like you mentioned before, I would say, closer to maybe 10 years ago, um, the pricing of those new projects used to be very, very affordable and very attractive. And people would say, hey, you know what, why don't I just book a pre-construction condo unit? I'm getting it at a little bit of a very good value, maybe even a little bit of a discount in terms of resale. What was the average price in the resale market? But now it's quite different. The average price of a resale condo, we like to talk in terms of price per square foot. So the average price for a condo downtown Toronto, price per square foot wise, is in the range of 1,000 to say $1,100 per square foot on average. And pre-construction is selling in the neighborhood of say $1,300 to $1,400 per square foot. So there is a difference there. And the reason why pre-construction is attractive to many investors is because of the fact that they can leverage their money, put down a deposit now, and then reap the benefits of whatever appreciation is gained, 4 years down the road when the condo is complete. So that's the draw. And that's what we like to refer to as not really necessarily, you're not just investing, you're kind of speculating, because if that product does not appreciate in 4 years, then you've speculated incorrectly and it wasn't such a great investment, really. Whereas if you're buying a resale property, you're putting down a certain amount of money and you're getting cash flow and rent on that property immediately. And you're building equity in that property immediately. So they're two different investments. And anyone who comes to us with regards to having or wanting to invest in a condo or any other kind of real estate, we kind of just break down to the pros and cons of each, and why there's certain scenarios and certain situations where it may be best for you to invest in pre-construction, and in certain scenarios it may be better for you to invest in a resale property, whether it's a condo or a resale home, or maybe a multiplex. As it depends on everyone's kind of appetite for the different types of investing that they're comfortable with.
Now, let's actually talk about areas because, like we were talking before, people are still hungry to get out there and they want to be able to buy a home. So I know there's been a lot of changes. Obviously, some areas that were really expensive now maybe are not so much. Areas that were really cheap comparative are now blowing up. So I'm sure you've got your eye on some places. So maybe we can pick 5 areas that you've got your eye on that if people are looking to either buy for themselves because it's affordable or because it would be a great investment area. Can you pick the top 5 places that you've got an eye on that we should all be watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's there's been, like I mentioned earlier, because of the way prices have increased and how it's for many it's become kind of out of reach or unaffordable to buy in Toronto. They've been looking at other options in terms of investments and for even for primary residences. So I would say some of the areas that we've really seen a big move to, and some of the areas that we also recommend clients to consider in terms of affordability and potential appreciation and increase in price down the road. So I'll start off with one. Well, I'll just mention them all, and then we can kind of talk about the pros and cons just briefly. But an area that we're seeing a lot of demand in is Kingston, Ontario. So just east of the GTA. Kingston, as you guys, many of you may know, Queen's University is in Kingston, Ontario, and it's definitely a big university town. And they've seen a lot of investments, a lot of new developments happening in the Kingston area, and it's quite affordable compared to Toronto. We're talking now, when I say affordable, we're talking about probably half the price in terms of average price. So if Toronto average price is $1 million, over there it's just under $500,000 for 2020. So most of these areas, from an affordability standpoint, in the 5 to 600K average price point, you can get a home or a condo. And so Kingston, Ontario is a big one. If we want to go further west, another area to consider would be London, Ontario, which has kind of been on the radar for many people. I would say, for several years now. And that whole kind of Kitchener, Waterloo, London, Ontario area and Guelph as well, those areas have been huge beneficiaries of the spill off, kind of from Toronto. Many people have moved west to those areas And I think we're going to continue to see that as they're still fairly affordable. Still, although their prices have drastically increased in the last couple of years, they're still reasonably affordable in the 500 to 600K average price point. So I would say those are also areas to potentially consider. And then if you go even further west, some people have been talking about going out to Windsor, Ontario, and even their surrounding areas around Windsor. Windsor has been historically very, very affordable for real estate. At one point, I think it was one of the most affordable cities of that size in Ontario for the real estate prices, and it still continues to be quite affordable. So as you know, it's very close to the U.S. People who are, moving across the U.S. often shares a border with Detroit across the river. And so there's been a renewed interest in Windsor for sure this year and last year. So that's something to keep on the radar. And then a couple of more just want to add were at the Hamilton region, which has seen considerable growth over the last couple of years. Now, when I say Hamilton, of course, Hamilton's quite broad. There are, certain areas which are better than others. So don't just go invest in Hamilton blindly. Make sure you have a good advisor kind of guiding you into which neighborhoods you want to be in. And it is quite affordable in Hamilton still. And the last one I would say is the Niagara region. Whether it's Niagara Falls or the surrounding region, there's been massive interest in Niagara over the last few years, and I think we personally we see that there's a lot of potential for growth there. And once tourism kind of comes back, once we see some other larger scale developments which are underway in Niagara kind of hit the ground, we do expect Niagara to increase substantially in the coming years. And now this is different from Niagara on the Lake, because Niagara on the Lake is quite a bit more expensive than the rest of the Niagara region. So Niagara on the Lake, in fact, is the average price point is quite high compared to the other cities in Ontario. So it's more of course, because of its wine country, it's got a certain appeal that leads to higher price points, but strictly from an investment perspective, the Niagara region is quite good to consider moving forward.
Okay, we got those 5 areas. So you were saying affordability is the number one factor you took into consideration. But when you have people that are coming in saying, I want to get something that will also be a good investment. So regardless of my circumstances change, they can do something with that property. Are there any factors that make some of these cities better than some of the others?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's when we look at from an investment standpoint, you want to look at other economic factors that are going to be a benefit for the city. So it can be the cheapest real estate, but if there's no growth expected there, then there's certainly not may not be the best investment. So when we look at growth, we look at economic growth in terms of, do we see investment in the city from different sectors? Many of those cities, you're seeing a lot of tech investment. And a lot of big tech corporations kind of opening up offices there, which means more jobs. So that's been a huge factor, whether it's Google or Amazon coming into some of these cities. That's kind of helped the job market, and so that's helped the real estate market overall. And we see that continuing even for other growing tech firms. And in some of the other areas, we also look at transit connectivity. So for example, some of those areas, of course, are along the 401 kind of corridor. And some of the others, of course, we're looking at transit in terms of train, right? So is there accessibility in terms of GO train, via rail? Is it still possible to get to Toronto in a reasonable amount of time from those cities if need be? So that's another, major consideration. And so those kind of factors really play a big part in future appreciation and future growth for those cities, and something that we definitely look for when considering investment. Similarly to how we would look at those factors also for local investments. So if someone's purchasing a pre-construction condo in Toronto, they're going to be paying a little bit of a premium, of course, to the developments that are close to transit, but they know that those are solid, sound investments in the long term. If you're located close to a subway, if you're located close to any other TTC hub, or a major highway, those investments historically have been always quite secure and fruitful in the long run.
Yeah, I think this is a really important factor because I know a lot of people, it's a lot of money that they're putting into either their first home or for their move up home. And I think right now, because no one's ever experienced such a crazy market, especially in these outside places, I know for a lot of my friends, they wouldn't have been able to even point out on the map where some of these small towns are. And all of a sudden, because it's affordable and because everyone's moving in, everyone knows what these areas are. I think a lot of people are wondering if they are going to put, let's say, 500K into one of these smaller areas when things reopen. Once we're past the whole COVID life, is their value going to be there? Is there the money they've paid still going to be there? Right? I think no one wants to be in a situation where the home that they paid probably peak pricing for right now, if not by the end of the year, would it may be worth less in a year or two. So that is why it's good to look into those factors like transportation, like future growth, because it kind of helps cushion. Although there's nothing that is 100% that's going to prevent, let's say, the price of your investment maybe not appreciating or maybe even going down, these factors kind of cushion that blow, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It also helps hugely in the event that you're not looking to, unload and sell that property right away, or if you're not going to assign it via an assignment. If you're planning on buying and then actually holding and renting out that property, being close to transit, for example, really helps with the rental price point as well. And you'll see the rents usually historically do very well in the areas that are close to transit. They're easier to rent, they're quicker to rent. So that's another factor that investors really look for.
Okay, so I think you already kind of answered this question, but my last question to you was going to be a checklist. So for people that are out there, there are a lot of options, right? So they're wondering, do I just blindly pick an area, or what are maybe the checklists that I should be using when I go with my realtor and I evaluate whether or not this is a property that I should buy or an area I should be buying in? So what is the checklist? It sounds like you already said affordability. Obviously, you want to make sure you can afford it. Close to transportation. So it's if for yourself as an end user, or if you end up renting it outright. And then future area plans. You want to make sure that there's that appreciation factor. Anything else on the checklist that people should be using when they're evaluating?
Yeah, absolutely. So some other big factors are, of course, the actual development itself, in terms of who is the developer, what's their track record, what have they done in the past. Is it someone, if you're not, as an investor, you may not be familiar with all those things, but that's where someone, whether you're getting advice from your realtor or from whoever is advising you, it would be very prudent to look into those things. And as you know, you can invest in projects that appear to be very lucrative, but it's very important to realize all these other factors, such as the developer. Do their projects actually get completed? Are they completed on time, or do they get canceled after 1 year of taking all your deposits, and then or 2 years after, 3 years after taking your deposits, and then the project is canceled? That has happened in several scenarios, so it's something you really want to be aware of. Imagine putting down $100,000 of your money, and then it's being held by the developer for 3 years, and then you're not getting any return on that money, and the project gets canceled. And if that money had been elsewhere, you may have potentially doubled it, or had a substantial return on it. So something that's very important to consider. It's not all about getting the project that's at the lowest price per square foot. Many people fall for that, and they just say, "Oh, this is an amazing deal. It's I haven't heard of the builder or the developer, but it's a great deal. I want to invest in it." So there's other factors that you should really consider, and that's something we advise our clients on. It's to deal with solid, reputable builders that are known for making a quality product, and they're known for completing their projects on time. So those are the builders that we kind of recommend without hesitation. And the other thing to consider, of course, is the overall benefits of pre-construction versus resale. Now, a lot of people kind of push the benefits of pre-construction, while that there are some, no doubt, but we also have to always consider the risks. I mentioned one of them already, projects being canceled. The other risks also to consider are And specifically, of course, the fact is you're buying from plan, right? So if you're strictly an investor, you're just buying off a floor plan of a property. You don't know what the unit is going to be looking like when it's completed. If you're an investor, you may not care necessarily to that extent what it's going to look like when it's completed. But if you're an end user, that's something that's of it may matter to you a lot more. So that's something that you may want to consider. Make sure you get proper advice about how that floor plan is actually going to flow for your needs, and how it works, because not everyone is educated and has experience in reading floor plans and how they actually work. So that's something we kind of really advise our clients on. And when they present us with any new project, and there's maybe 20 or 50 different floor plans for that project, we really work with them and say, okay, these are the pros and cons of each single floor plan for this development. What are the things you want to look for? And also, for if you're an end user, many people we've seen, and this is specifically for pre-construction homes, not condos. Condos, as we know, have a 10-day cooling off period after you, or we refer to it as a rescission period, where you can review the documents with your lawyer that you've signed with the builder, make sure you're comfortable with everything, all the clauses, all the closing costs and everything else. When you're purchasing a new home directly from a builder, many, I would say, a vast majority of them do not have this 10-day cooling off period because it's not mandatory by law. For condos, it's mandatory by law. So people line up for these brand new homes. We see it all the time. They go there without any representation, of course, without having any advice from a realtor, and they just join the line and book a new house because they've heard their friends doing it and it's a great idea. And they don't realize when they're signing off on those contracts are heavily in favor of the builder, not in favor of the client. So, and they're not vetted by your lawyer. You're just basically signing them, and you have to sign it right there on the spot. There's a lot of pressure to sign it on the spot, because if you don't, the next person is going to take that house, right? So we really advise people to make sure that you know how that process works beforehand, so that you know the things to look out for, and that you're comfortable. If you're comfortable taking on that risk, then it's fine. But make sure you're fully knowledgeable before you go out and make those kinds of decisions, because we deal with real estate lawyers a lot, and many of and we hear the stories about clients who've come back and they say, "Hey, I didn't know that this was not in the contract." Of course, you don't know, because you're not reading the whole 50 or 30-page contract and all the fine print that's in it when you're signing that document. So we really recommend getting the advice of a realtor or a lawyer, if you can, prior to signing those kinds of documents.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things I've noticed my friends mentioning to me, there's been a number of new projects that just got released, and it's the next phase,
Mm.
and no brokers allowed. So now all of a sudden, the first phase, there was open to brokers. You could bring someone with you. Now,
Yeah,
no brokers,
yeah,
and no 10-day cooling period. And a lot of times you don't even get the information until you arrive at your appointment. So if you want to get a price list, if you want to see floor plans, you might see a little bit, but nothing official. And I'm also hearing about builders that change the day of the launch, even
mm,
prices, right? I mean, there was a project I just heard about in Barrie where the builder increased everything by $20,000
mm.
like hours before. So it's it almost seems like it's putting buyers in this scary situation where they're signing up for something, they can't bring their broker, they don't get that 10-day cooling period. So what advice would you have for those people that still are trying to get a home, but the builder's building all these restrictions around what they can do to keep themselves safe?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the best thing you can do is, regardless if there's no brokers, you're not allowed to have representation by your realtor, and you're not allowed to advise your lawyer after the fact, or to have them look at the contract after the fact. I would say try to do those things prior to going to that launch, and to get at least to kind of have knowledge yourself about certain things to look for. And then beyond that, of course, you have to be comfortable taking on that level of risk. But I would say definitely have a conversation with your realtor and your lawyer. Now, of course, none of them are, getting paid for that advice, but I'm sure that many would be happily willing to give that advice to you as a valued client, to kind of share with you what their opinion is about that particular project, whether they think it's a good value, whether they think, there's certain things you should be looking out for. We've done that for many of our clients who, there's even though we're not involved and we're not getting, any commission or anything out of it on that particular transaction, but we're happy to advise them about certain things about that transaction if that's something they really want to invest in. So try to do the legwork and that homework beforehand before you're going to the site and lining up and signing off on a purchase of that stature because it's a considerable investment for sure.
Okay, well, I'm almost out of time, so I want to make sure if there was anything else you wanted to make sure that the listener and viewers knew about the real estate market here, you got the opportunity to share it. Any last words?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I just want to say for all of you guys who are out there kind of actively searching for homes, be patient. I know the market's been crazy over the last several months, and it seems like for the last even several years, it's been a very, very active market with great price appreciation, which is very nice for sellers, but for buyers, there are some benefits also. The fact that interest rates have come down in the last little while. They're very, very, very good low interest rates. We're talking, 1.5, 1.6% mortgages. So you do have an opportunity where you can take advantage of those low rates. If you've been saving, it's a very good opportunity to get into the market, take advantage of, your savings and your RRSPs. You're getting a break on land transfer taxes, getting a rebate on that. So there are certain incentives and benefits that you have for purchasing. And I think there is some kind of renewed optimism and hope now that we're seeing more inventory coming on the market. So for those of you who have been competing for so long and losing out on multiple offers again and again, kind of have hope that things are going to get better. And then also, I would say there's certain things you really want to try to do if you're in that situation. There's certain things you can do to make your chances better. And some of those include, of course, making sure that you're pre-approved with your mortgage, so that you don't have to include a condition for that necessarily. So talking to your mortgage professionals early in the process and ongoing conversations, because you may start out having a pre-approval 2 months ago where your budget is 700,000, and then after 2 months of trying to find something, your budget may have increased, or the prices may have increased, and so now all of a sudden you need to kind of adjust, and so you need to have ongoing discussions with your mortgage broker or agent about how that's going to impact your end game in terms of you getting those finances, right? So keep those things in mind, and of course, if you need any help with the process, we're myself and our team are more than happy to help anyone looking to purchase or sell in the GTA or invest.
If anybody wants to reach out with you with more questions, is there
Yeah.
a website or a link that we can post?
Yeah. I can. I'll post a link. I'll give you the link to my website, and then also they can reach out to me via phone, 416-723-6216. And we'd be happy to assist you guys anytime. And for those of you looking to purchase this year, I would say, again, try to get into the market, sooner, especially if you're looking to purchase in Toronto or downtown. It would be a great idea to get into the market sooner rather than later. So definitely reach out to us, even if your plans are not for, later in the year. It's always good to get an initial conversation going earlier so that we can advise you accordingly in terms of how to best, proceed with that transaction.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much for all, to all the listeners as well. Hopefully we're able to provide some good value and content. And if you have any particular questions, like I said, we'd be happy to answer them so that, you can figure out what's best in your individual scenario. And Amin, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.